The Revenant was released in 2015, directed by Alejandro Inarritu, and stars Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Hardy. So this film's a few years old now. I remember seeing it in the cinema, I think very early in 2016. And I was curious to see it. I'd only seen one film by the director previously. He directed Birdman with Michael Keaton that won the Best Picture Oscar, I think, 2014 or 2015. And Birdman was a film that I thought was technically marvelous, but it didn't do anything really for me on a sort of story level. I didn't like that film overall. But The Revenant seemed more up my street. I like period pieces. I like westerns. Um, I like films that can be a bit of a slow burn. Films with sort of survivalist elements. So I thought, yeah, I think there's probably going to be some things here that I enjoy, um, and that is correct. There was quite a lot here to admire. I'm going to discuss that the pros of the film first, as I usually do. It's an experience-driven film. In terms of plot, there's not all that much that happens. It's a 2.5 hour film. It's paced very slowly. It feels longer than 2.5 hours. I have to be honest. I did notice a lot of people in the cinema looking at their watch when I went to see this film. Um, it's an experience-driven film. As with Birdman, probably more so. There was some exceptional uh, cinematography in this film. There were some really really complex shots and really complex scenes that I honestly can't figure out how they did it. Anyone who's tried to take a I don't know a photo on your phone or something, when you get contrasting contrasting colours and shadows and things, different times of day. I mean, that's a taster for just how difficult it is to choreograph a long take scene when you're not operating in a Hollywood studio. You're in the wilderness. So I mean, from that level, the cinema, the director of photography and the director deserve full praise for being able to pull some of the scenes in this film off. Um, and it is a gorgeous looking film. I mean, some of the scenery, it's set in like sort of 1820s Midwest. So I think it's like South Dakota, Wyoming. I mean, it looks beautiful. I mean, it's a film to be seen in the cinema, or at the very least in sort of high definition on a big screen. Um, I like the setting of the film. I liked that it was quite period accurate. Um, and I think a lot of I mean, as I say, this wasn't shot in a Hollywood backlot. This was shot in real life in the wilderness, and I think the fact that, from my understanding, they used exclusively natural light sources to light the film. Well, either natural or if it's characters at night, around a campfire, things like that. So it's like natural lighting, also like sort of fires and candles and things like that. And I think being able to light a film like that is just amazing. I mean, I can't even sort of comprehend the sort of talent and skill that you would need from a camera perspective to be able to pull this off for a 2.5 hour film. So that was great. Performance wise, Tom Hardy. No, I'm not talking about Leonardo DiCaprio yet. Tom Hardy steals the film. I think his performance is the best part of it. His character is the most sort of developed, the most fleshed out. I mean, Tom Hardy always comes in a good performance. I think even films that I've not liked that much, he always gives it his best, and he usually achieves something special with his performances. Um, I struggled to understand some of his lines. I think when I saw this in the cinema, but when I watched it again, subtitles were on and I got it. That's fine. The themes of the film, it's a man versus nature film. I like all that stuff. I think, as I said, I quite like survivalist stories. Um, and it was fine. And um, I really loved when the film got sort of fast paced. So the opening scene, where I believe it's a one take shot where the Native Americans start attacking the fur trappers, and you see like just carnage really. I mean, people getting like arrows through them, and they're all rushing to get to the boat. I mean, there's a lot going on. It really sets the sort of brutal tone of the film quite well. Um, After that, though, the film for a film that it starts with a breakneck pace. I mean that those first 15-20 minutes of the film are so fast paced. The rest of the film is very slow. And I don't mind that, but I guess it is a legitimate criticism to say that I found the pacing of the film a little uneven. And I think that was an issue. That was an issue for me because I didn't, as I say, the film did feel quite long. Um, I did think that it got a little bit pretentious sometimes with the sort of lingering shots. Frequently, the scenes where Leonardo DiCaprio's character is sort of, he's blacking out and he's having these visions or dreams of his wife, of his child, and about his backstory. That for me, I mean, that didn't really get paid off, did it? There wasn't really. I expected there to be some kind of, I guess you could say, catharsis at the end of the film where he comes to terms with his past. Maybe it's revealed that he did bad things, and he's trying to sort of atone for it, and it would maybe go into detail about how he knows all of this survivalist stuff. Has he had experience of this, or is he just kind of lucky? Is it just his training from like maybe being in the army or something? I thought there'd be a bit more backstory given, especially because they tease it with these flashbacks. Um, the story overall, in fact, no, I'll discuss that in a second. Leonardo DiCaprio, of course, won his first best actor Oscar for this film. His performance is interesting. I mean, he doesn't have a lot of dialogue in the film. It's mostly just. The film. I don't think he gives a good performance per se, but I mean, it's an. I mean, what he goes through in this film is an endurance test. Whether it was eating the like raw fish and raw whatever the raw cattle liver, and having to move through the cold and being surrounded by like blood and animal guts and all this sort of stuff. And props to him for. I mean, it's an endurance test. But is it a good performance? I think the jury, for me, the jury's still out on that one. I mean, Leonardo DiCaprio is one of these actors. He likes to shout a lot. He does intense very well. He likes playing characters that are essentially himself. I think I've said this in a previous review. Actually, I can't remember. He likes playing, the Wolf of Wall Street, or Django, the Django Unchained villain, or someone like that that's just very over the top and sort of campy and opulent. The Great Gatsby is the sort of perfect role, I guess, for him. Um, but yeah, I think with these dramatic films, it's a bit. I don't know. I'm always a bit unsure if the performance is actually good, if you know what I mean. But it's fine for the film. It didn't distract me too much. I did like the very last shot of the film, which I'll discuss at the end, just because I guess it's maybe a bit spoilery. But um, the story of the film, when I first saw this film, I think I took real issue with it because I think I read somewhere that the real life story of Hugh Glass, the fur trapper who was mauled by a bear and had to claw his way through 200 miles of wilderness to reach civilization. Um, I read somewhere that in real life the guy like forgave the people that left him. It was a story that was popular because it was a survivalist story, but also it was a story of like forgiveness and redemption and things like that. But in the film, obviously, it kind of devolves into like sort of bloodthirst and vengeance. And I think at one point he even mentions that the only reason that he goes through the 200 miles is to find Tom Hardy's character and kill him. And I remember thinking, God, that's not good. I don't like it when films, you know, change real life um, people's motivations like that, to turn someone who forgave the people that left him in the wilderness into someone that you know sought out their blood, basically. Um, I mean, with historical adaptations, there's always going to be liberties taken, biographies or whatever. that's fine. But I think to change something as fundamental as that, I thought actually no, I don't really agree with that. But I did a bit of research before doing this review, and it turns out that Hugh Glass, the only things that are really known about him are that he was a real person, he was attacked by a bear, and he clawed his way through 200 miles of wilderness. Everything else is sort of apocryphal and sort of legendary almost. It's not really. I mean, very little is known about what actually happened in his life. He didn't write. He didn't write a book. He didn't write an account of what he endured. Um, so with that in mind, actually, I don't really have that much of a problem with the plot of the film. All the stuff about him having a Native American wife and a son that was killed and everything is just in the film. That did not happen in real life. But that I don't think that's as bad. Um, so the plot of the film I didn't really have an issue with from that perspective. Um, some parts of it did feel a bit left field for me. The whole subplot of then the Native Americans looking for their daughter or something that's been kidnapped by like French traders. I didn't really understand what that had to do with the plot. I can't. Yeah, it seemed kind of like a B story almost. I didn't really understand how it interacted with what Leonardo DiCaprio was doing. But the film overall, I thought it was overindulgent in some respects. It was. I don't want to say style over substance because I think sometimes that's thrown around a little too much. But there was a little there was some parts that I thought devolved into like pretentiousness. Um, but overall, I thought the film worked. I don't dislike the film. I don't think it's bad. I just didn't really get from it what I thought I would get from it. I think for a film to look this beautiful, it really, in my mind, it's done a disservice by the fact that the plot and all of the characters aren't really completely in service of it. They don't really quite match it. Um, but having said that, I am going to recommend it, and I'm going to give the film 62 out of 100. Um, I mentioned earlier that I think I laughed in the cinema when I saw the very last shot of this film, and this is a spoiler. So I'm guessing most people have seen the film now anyway, but Leonardo DiCaprio is just had his big fight with Tom Hardy. Tom Hardy gets killed by the Native Americans, and Leonardo DiCaprio like breaks the fourth wall, which I did not expect from this kind of film. He like looks right at the camera, and you can almost kind of hear him under his breath. He's saying, "Please give me an Oscar," and it sort of lingers on his face, staring at the camera for 15 seconds before cutting to credits. And I thought it was a really bizarre way to end the film. It made me laugh because I was imagining what's really going on in the actor's mind at the time. But yeah, The Revenant is a fine film, but not really much more.